Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Do you struggle with a lack of focus or energy? The team at Physician Designed knows the feeling, and they can help. Brain Support Micro PQQ and Microactive CoQ10 both use a proprietary blend of PQQ and CoQ10 to maximize the boost you need without any negative side effects. Studies show that Brain Support Micro PQQ and Microactive CoQ10 lower fatigue, anxiety, and depression while increasing mental acuity and awareness. Feel the difference for yourself today. You can save 30% on your next order at physiciandesigned.com. Just use the code GENIUS during checkout. Again, that's GENIUS to get 30% off at physiciandesigned.com.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast and the Surviving Hard Times Podcast. My guest today is Meag Sargent. She's in sales. The company is called Farm from a Box. It's an off-grid toolkit for sustainable agriculture. So we're going to go into what Farm from a Box is about and a bit of Meg's background. Welcome, Meg. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, cool. Tell me about your background and then what formed the premise of Farm from a Box.
You know, when I look back, I don't really know if there's any way that I couldn't become a horticulturist. So my degree's in horticulture. I come from a long line of farmers and growers on both sides of my family. So it's always been something I was interested in. But really my interest in this work came from helping my dad turn our tiny little Milwaukee backyard into a really productive fruit and vegetable garden when I was a kid. And, you know, when I was young, I didn't really realize the significance of that. But when I got into high school and college, I realized that that really wasn't a common experience for everyone. So, you know, that was such a formative experience, both growing the food that we ate, but also realizing that other people weren't quite as lucky. So that's really, you know, what sparked my passion for food and farming and what drives a lot of my work now. I think that food and cooking and farming it's such an integral part of the human experience. And I think that everyone deserves to have that same connection to their food in terms of course, access to healthy ingredients, but, you know, to also be able to nurture the emotional and cultural aspects of their well-being too. So that's really what Farm from a Box is about. We've designed this off-grid toolkit, and our main goal really is to help communities produce their own food. So of course, we're addressing, you know, the physical well-being, access to healthy food, but a big part of, you know, building food independence is helping communities grow culturally affirming foods too.
What is that? What do you mean a toolkit? What does this mean? What do you guys offer? Like a way for people to grow it hydroponically, or I don't.
So it's not hydroponic. We're built out of a shipping container, but in contrast to every other shipping container farm, we are designed for outdoor regenerative farming.
Okay, so is it like an open shipping container, or do you start the plants, let's say, in the shipping container and then they get moved outside? Like, how does this work, you know, if someone gets one and works with it?
So great question. So it's built out of the shipping container. If you want to think of it in the sense that, you know, the shipping container is sort of like the brain of the infrastructure. So our system is built out of a shipping container, but it's not hydroponic. And that's in contrast to all of the other shipping container systems out there. So we are built for outdoor regenerative farming. And our system includes all of the core components you need to run a productive and sustainable farm. So it's really an all-in-one system. And when I say all-in-one, I mean that we have solar power, a battery for reliable energy storage. We include a water pump and filter, a drip irrigation system. There's integrated cold storage, Wi-Fi connectivity, and we have a data platform that helps the farmers conserve their resources and monitor the health of their entire farm, from the technology to their soil health.
Well, you said it's outdoor, inside of a shipping container. I mean, I guess that's considered indoors. So how does the shipping container interface with the rest of the farming? Again, do you start plants in the shipping container and they move outside, or how does it work?
Nope. So there's no growing inside the shipping container at all. The shipping container is, I guess it serves as sort of a central hub for the farm. So inside the container itself, about half of the container is a walk-in cold storage unit, and the other half has a work table. It houses, the Wi-Fi modem and all of the little bits and pieces of the brain that run the data system. So there's no plants grown inside the container itself. All of the infrastructure supports outdoor growing, traditional in-field soil farming.
A mobile office with instrumentation, communication, storage, all that stuff is what it sounds like, that the company is the outdoor growing.
Exactly. So when Farm from a Box first started, the idea really was to make this mobile infrastructure that could, theoretically be picked up and moved from place to place. That idea has really grown over time, and we see it less as a mobile infrastructure now and more of a turnkey toolkit that can be quickly deployed to jumpstart food production pretty much anywhere in the world.
So what does sustainable agriculture mean for someone that doesn't know? What are the elements of it that make it that?
That's a great question. There's a lot of components to it. I think that the big ones are probably going to be, soil health. Regenerative agriculture is having a big moment right now because there's a lot of talk about rebuilding our soil health because it's so important in terms of, are we able to yield enough crops? Are the crops, going to be nutrient dense? But we also, focus on things like water conservation. We also focus, transitioning our food system away from the traditional heavy polluting fossil fuel infrastructure by using solar power. So there's a lot of different components to sustainability. And really what we've tried to do is bring all these different pieces together and take all of the guesswork out of sourcing all of these sustainable, climate smart infrastructure components.
Well, yeah, I've spoken to some people that do outdoor farming. So regenerative, from what I understand, it involves cover crops. It involves not monoculture, no till of the soil. I mean, things like that, using your own compost as fertilizer for the next round, et cetera. So does your system help people to do those things? Or is it more like you said, using solar and these other technologies that, are supposed to be green?
It's both. So we are really designed to support and enhance the impacts of regenerative farming. And so all of the farms we work with either were regenerative from the beginning before we started working with them, or have transitioned into regenerative farming. And, we're able to support regenerative farming because we use things like drip irrigation, which protects soil health and grows more nutrient dense crops without the need for heavy synthetic fertilizer applications. And so our system is really designed to integrate perfectly with regenerative farms and kind of double down on the impact that all of those incredible practices that you mentioned, things like crop rotation and cover cropping and agroforestry, already have.
Okay. So what do you guys consider the most important aspects of regenerative farming? Let's say someone, for some reason, I don't know, it's all new to them. They can't do everything at once. What is your recommendation on some of the first things that people should do with your system if they're going to, they may not utilize every bell and whistle of it, but on a basic level, how do they start utilizing it in the right way?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't know if anyone's ever asked me that question. That's a really interesting question. I would say that.
Well, I know, I've bought stuff that's technically complicated. So, when you first use it, you're like overwhelmed. So I would think like some people unintentionally or intentionally would just only use a small part of it, either by mistake or because they're just overwhelmed. So
yeah, no, that's a great question.
What is that?
Really, I know our system seems complicated because it does have a lot of components, but it's really not. And the reason I say that is, for background, I've been farming for about 10 years, and the components of our system it's infrastructure that most farms already have. Most farms already have a cold storage unit. Most farms already have an irrigation system of some sort. and it's not necessarily that we're trying to reinvent the way people are farming or drastically change the way that they're farming. We're helping them shift towards more environmentally friendly, sustainable practices. And so I guess I don't know that there would be a certain component of the system that a lot of people would use before the others, just because they all sort of work together. It works as one sort of dynamic system where every sort of piece works together.
Before we continue, I've been personally funding the Finding Genius podcast for 4.5 years now, which has led to 2,700 plus interviews of clinicians, researchers, scientists, CEOs, and other amazing people who are working to advance science and improve our lives and our world. Even though this podcast gets 100,000 plus downloads a month, we need your help to reach hundreds of thousands more worldwide. Please visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click on Support Us. We have 3 levels of membership from $10 to $49 a month, including perks such as the ability to see ahead in our interview calendar and ask questions of upcoming guests, transcripts of podcasts you're interested in, the ability to request specific topics or guests, and more. Visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click Support Us today. Now back to the show.
Have you seen people use the system in ways you guys didn't envision that surprised you in a good way?
Yeah, actually, I have a great example of that. And I mean, this really speaks to the flexibility of our system, which definitely I would love to dive into a little bit more. But essentially, our system can be configured specifically to the farm that it's going to be deployed on. So we don't really believe in this idea of, one size fits all technology. And so there's this farm, Rebel Earth Farms, that we work with. They're out on Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. And it's a Lakota-led farm. And, what I've learned from them is that the Lakota were not traditionally an agrarian people. They did not farm historically. Their food sources were the buffalo and wild foods that they would gather. And so what we've done for Rebel Earth is we've configured the solar power of their system to power the heat in their high tunnels. And so they're able to grow for longer periods of the year, extend their growing season. But within their high tunnels, they're researching ways to grow traditional wild foods that the Lakota people were eating. And so they're trying to say, okay, can we, produce these foods in more of a traditional farming setting? And if we produce them on a farm, will they have the same, medicinal properties, the same flavor? Will it be culturally acceptable to produce them on a farm? And so I think that's definitely an example of a way that, our system can integrate in a way that's a bit unexpected or not as much of a traditional, commercial farm.
Do you struggle with a lack of focus or energy? The team at Physician Designed knows the feeling, and they can help. Brain Support Micro PQQ and Microactive CoQ10 both use a proprietary blend of PQQ and CoQ10 to maximize the boost you need without any negative side effects. Studies show that Brain Support Micro PQQ and Microactive CoQ10 lower fatigue, anxiety, and depression while increasing mental acuity and awareness. Feel the difference for yourself today. You can save 30% on your next order at physiciandesigned.com. Just use the code GENIUS during checkout. Again, that's GENIUS to get 30% off at physiciandesigned.com.
Does your system have a file of all the crops that it has understanding of how to grow? How long it takes to grow them and how long they need to be in a blackout period, if any, and that kind of stuff? Because you mentioned a few times that you work with different cultures, so they may grow stuff that you're not familiar with or is not in your list. So I don't know if you guys, account for that at all, or how does that work?
So we don't have necessarily a list or I guess instructions of how to grow this or how to grow that, but we're not really trying to decide what people are growing. We're not trying to change the way people are farming. People know how to farm. Communities have been farming for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And so when we, integrate with a farm, whether it's the farm that we work with in Tanzania or a farm we work with in South Dakota or, West Sacramento, each one of them is growing different crops, but the flexibility of our system lets us configure the drip irrigation and the water flow rate and the water filter specifically to their needs, to their crop plan. And so when a farm approaches us and is interested in Farm from a Box, we spend a really long time learning about their farm. We learn, what their challenges are, their production goals, what they're interested in growing. And that lets us configure the system specifically to their needs.
Well, again, though, I mean, a library would be helpful. If I'm growing, 15 different things and I'm in, Texas, and you have a library that says, hey, according to your climate, you can grow this, that, and the other. Did you know? I say, ooh, all right, I want to start growing that. Why not have a library of information for people that are in different areas so they can get new ideas to grow things maybe they didn't know how to grow or they could grow before?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I think that, we don't have that because we work with folks who are already farming. And like I said, people know how to farm. We're working with people who have been farming already. And I think a big challenge with that would just be that we work across the world. And there are just so many different crops that it seems like a big task to have a sort of individualized specific library for each location. I think it's a fantastic idea. And we've talked internally about, we would love to create some sort of communication board or online resource for our farmers to share knowledge and ask questions and learn from each other. But as far as creating, an individualized list each location, that seems like a big challenge.
Well, the reason why I mention is, let's say I'm a subsistence farmer in Tanzania. I've only got so much land. I'm really constrained by money. I may not be able to sit there and do the calculation of, okay, if I grow this, they need to be spaced 8 inches apart. That means I can grow 47 of them and they sell for this much. I may be able to, like with your software, if you make it, you'd be able to help those people, let's say, optimize the economics of what they're doing. And if they're hanging on by a thread, or if they really need the help and a 10% boost would really help them, this may be super useful to have something like that, just to start in one area.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. And one thing we do is we offer education to all of our farmers. We work with local experts as we deploy the farms to provide training for our farmers. And so a beautiful example of that actually is our farm in Tanzania. It was a partnership with the World Food Program, and it is in a refugee camp. It's one of the largest refugee camps in the world. And the farmers there went through a really long training process, several months of learning regenerative farming practices, organic farming practices, business models, how to run an agribusiness, how to run a profitable agribusiness. So we do provide that education and training aspect. It's just not something that's part of our data system.
Well, when you do the training, do you keep the training videos so they could be reused? Because that may be helpful too. If you just can't get out to a spot, or if you go and do training at a farm in Tanzania and then you guys have to leave to move on to the next one, why not have maybe a series of videos of the training you did, maybe just for that farm, that after you leave, they can reference them and watch them again and say, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot you have to do that to grow XYZ, or to help them train better ongoing.
Well, that's why we work with local experts. So the folks who were doing the training in Tanzania were people from the community in Tanzania who had been farming. We weren't the ones providing that training because, I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Milwaukee. I don't know what it's like to farm over there. I don't know the soil type. I don't know the climate. I don't know the pests. And so that's why we think it's so important to engage the local experts who have been farming there, who are there, who are part of the community. And so it's not that we're just, coming in, doing a quick training and then leaving. They have the experts that they can continue to work with and learn from. And then, the people who are learning from them can teach the next round of farmers that's coming into the community. And the knowledge is passed on that way.
What happens if, one of the solar arrays breaks, or the pump gets messed up, or the Wi-Fi goes out on one of the units? What do people do?
So we're available for maintenance for all of our farms. We have not had many maintenance issues at all, but we don't just drop off our system and then leave people behind. We are available remotely. We are available to come out to the farm, have a wonderful maintenance and deployment team that when the farm arrives on site, goes through training of how to run and maintain and fix the entire system. We have, print materials available, both with text and pictures of how to fix things. So we're not just leaving people high and dry, because of course things can always go wrong. But, our system, every single system that rolls out is pre-tested to make sure that it actually works. And we source technology from the best manufacturers in the game. We've spent a really long time developing the relationships, making sure that we're sourcing from the industry's top technology producers to make sure that our farmers are getting the best quality product.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you do support them. I was just wondering what happens if you have something great, so that's a maintenance program where you can help them out. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's very situational. If it's something that maybe just the water filter needs to be flushed, for example, we can remotely support a farmer through that. And that is something that you can see on the data platform. You get a notification that says, hey, your water filter needs to be flushed. The water isn't flowing through correctly. And that's something that would be very easy to remotely support them through. But if it's something like, maybe you had a huge windstorm and the solar panels got knocked off, maybe that's something where we would come out to your farm and help make sure that everything was reinstalled correctly.
What happens with populations that have really no use of technology? They do everything the old school way. How does it work for them, the learning curve? And then, what do you notice that they do after they get a farm in a box?
I don't know that we've worked with a community that really doesn't have technology experience. We provide full training on our data platform, but, that's an interesting question. I don't know that we've worked with a community that had zero technological knowledge. I think that, technology is so widespread now.
Well, maybe not zero, but just less. Like in Tanzania, I would guess that they probably are not using all first world methods. They probably have at least a mixture of old school and new school. So maybe your system sounds like, totally avant-garde, the future type stuff. Was there any disconnect in any of the farms you put in, or people are already using that level of technology and so it was no big deal?
Yeah, I don't know if avant-garde is the phrase I would use. I think that the flexibility of our system lets us integrate seamlessly into pretty much any farm. And it's not, like I said, we're not changing the way people farm. We're just providing the infrastructural support for people to continue farming the way that they have been farming for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years. This farm in Tanzania, we're not going in and saying, here's the technology that's going to replace your traditional farming methods. We're saying, here's solar power cold storage that it's affordable to run. You don't need to hook up to an electric grid. You don't need to, run a diesel generator to power it, which is incredibly expensive. So we're providing solutions that people are familiar with, that are really easy to integrate. I haven't seen that sort of, barrier that maybe you're imagining.
Well, that's good. I wondered if it was there, but if you say it's not, that's great.
No, it's a fantastic question. And I think it's, of course, something to be aware of is every community is going to work with technology differently and receive things differently and learn about things differently. But, that it's not something that we've come across.
All right, so what is the future of the company? What's next in terms of new units coming out or new projects or new farms to go after? What's the future?
That's a wonderful question. We are really focused currently on large scale farms. So, this is timely with COP27 beginning right now and all these conversations about, we need big scale change. And so Farm from a Box is a modular system. And what I mean by that is we can deploy multiple Farm from a Box systems on the same farm and they can work together. And so if you have a farm that's a couple hundred or a couple thousand acres, we can provide enough infrastructural support in terms of cold storage, irrigation, solar power to support your entire operation. And so what we're really focused on is providing that turnkey infrastructure to jumpstart sustainable food production on these large scale farms, to be able to go in and quickly upgrade their entire infrastructure to be more climate smart. So that's what we're really looking at right now is opportunities where we can deploy multiple boxes together and have that bigger impact.
Are you doing it to reduce emissions or are you doing it to help them grow more? What is the desire of the places you're working with?
Both. Both. And, it's that balance. I think that often the conversation about, yield or sustainability tends to go one way or the other. For us, it's both. We work to help farms improve their productivity, grow better crops, but not have as big of an environmental impact. It has to be both. Farms have to be profitable. They have to be able to produce enough food, but we can't keep doing it in the same harmful industrialized way that we have been doing.
Okay, well, very good. What's the best way for people to find out more about the company? Where can they go? farmfromabox.com. We have all of our information about our technology, how to get started if you're interested in purchasing a system.
We're also on social media. Any social media platform will be Farm from a Box.
Okay. Well, very good. Farm from a Box.
Yep.
Well, Meg, thank you for coming on and explaining this, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Do you struggle with a lack of focus or energy? The team at Physician Designed knows the feeling, and they can help. Brain Support Micro PQQ and Microactive CoQ10 both use a proprietary blend of PQQ and CoQ10 to maximize the boost you need without any negative side effects. Studies show that Brain Support Micro PQQ and Microactive CoQ10 lower fatigue, anxiety, and depression, while increasing mental acuity and awareness. Feel the difference for yourself today. You can save 30% on your next order at physiciandesigned.com. Just use the code GENIUS during checkout. Again, that's GENIUS to get 30% off at physiciandesigned.com.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.